Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. Now available on Lulu, John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at lulu.com today. Better get the cool slow, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. Incumbent Congressman Jaamal Bowman wound up losing his seat last night to George Latimer in a hotly contested congressional primary race.
The most expensive congressional primary in American history is over, and voters in New York have rejected left-wing Democrat Congressman Jaamal Bowman. Bowman lost to fellow Democrat George Latimer in a bitterly contested contest. They were divided over issues of the Israel-Hamas war, and Scott McFarlane is with us covering this race. Scott, how many millions of dollars? This was a lot.
25 million. That is bonkers money, and it was particularly bitter. Jaamal Bowman, a 48-year-old former middle school principal, aligned with the most progressive Democrats in Congress, known as the Squad, lost support from voters in his own party. He'd been among the most vocal critics of how Israel is fighting the war in Gaza, calling Prime Minister Netanyahu a maniac and referring to the war as a genocide. The challenger, Westchester County Executive George Latimer, was fueled by millions of dollars from Jewish American political action groups. This race really raises questions about the political impact for Democrats who are so outspoken against Israel. It could change some of the focus of some of the campaigns ahead of November. But even in this toxic political environment, there are new signs voters are looking for some form of harmony. Last week, a Virginia Republican who frequently defies his own party got close and is now at risk of losing his primary. And today it's Jaamal Bowman, who voted against President Biden's initiatives in some way in the past 2 years, who lost Democratic support.
That Bowman race wasn't even close either.
It was a blowout.
Pay attention to that. Yeah.
So, Scott, let's talk about Colorado. Controversial Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. She scored a big win in the district that she switched to. I don't think a lot of Americans even knew you could switch districts, but what happened there?
She had a real small victory and a real big scare in 2022. And rather than run against the same Democratic opponent, she picked up and moved to a different, more rural Colorado district.
She physically moved?
She didn't have to move her home,
Okay.
but she moved where she sought the nomination.
Okay.
And so some called it opportunism, but when opportunity knocks, she took it and she romped. And she is likely to win in November.
I was one of those people, Vlad, when you said, I think most people don't know you could switch. Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I thought
Scott,
you had
I didn't know you could switch.
You had to physically move, but I guess
Just
did
got to
too.
stay in the same state.
All right, Scott.
Fascinating.
Good to have you at the table. Thank you.
Now, incumbent Jaamal Bowman was in a hotly contested race against George Latimer for the congressional seat in New York's 16th district. And this whole primary was considered to be the most expensive race for a congressional seat in U.S. history, with over $25 million spent by different political groups in an effort to oust incumbent Jaamal Bowman from the seat he was sitting in Congress since 2021. Now, what's really unusual about this entire situation regarding Jaamal Bowman is that when it comes to congressional primaries, usually they are a cakewalk for the incumbent, and usually the incumbent winds up trouncing whatever individuals try to challenge him for that seat, like a jobber in a wrestling match. But in the case of Jaamal Bowman, the whole blue party basically was divided to the point where they wound up looking to run another candidate to take that congressional seat away from him, and were looking to spend copious amounts of money in an effort to do so. And they wound up spending over $25 million through organizations like AIPAC in an effort to oust Jaamal Bowman. And with Jaamal Bowman basically ousted as related to the primary, the whole situation is one that wound up shocking many progressives, such as members of the Squad that Jaamal Bowman was a part of, with other members like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar. Jaamal Bowman was it was a surprise to everyone. as related to that section of progressives, to see him basically taken out of his seat. Now, it was no surprise to me to see Jaamal Bowman get kicked out of his seat, because when it came to Jaamal Bowman, he really did not understand the subtle politics transpiring around him. And because he didn't understand the subtle politics transpiring around him as related to maintaining his congressional seat, he wound up thinking that as an individual, he could go out here and represent the interests of a minority coalition and completely ignore all of the black voters who went out here and were a part of his base. Now, Jaamal Bowman was a former school principal turned politician, and he primarily got into office on the black vote that was a major part of Co-op City in the Bronx, Mount Vernon in upstate New York, and New Rochelle, that is also a part of upstate New York. And instead of him looking out for the base that basically put him in office, Jaamal Bowman made the mistake of basically taking the black vote for granted and decided to, instead of representing the interest of his black constituents, decided to go and follow the progressive agenda as an individual and form an alliance with the females who are a part of the Congressional faction known as the Squad. Now, Jaamal Bowman thought that he would find strength in numbers by supporting women who were a part of the Squad, such as Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Rashida Tlaib. And he thought that the Squad would be a good place for him in Congress because as an individual, he would be a part of a coalition of minorities, and he thought he could use that coalition of minorities to go out here and represent the 16th district and be a part of a more diverse base that would possibly guarantee that he would be re-elected as an incumbent congressman. That's what Jaamal Bowman thought he was going to do. Unfortunately, he couldn't really see the big picture as related to the subtle politics transpiring around him. And as he got caught up in the progressive rhetoric of people like Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, he forgot how black he was as he decided to go out here and wage his whole progressive campaign against interest as related to Israel. Now, in the aftermath of October 7th and the terror attack that took place where Hamas wound up murdering over 1,000 people, many were upset about this carnage, except Jaamal Bowman, who seemed to have no compassion for many of the Israelis and Jews who wound up losing their lives in that whole act of terrorism. No, what Jaamal Bowman decided to do was show how progressive he was by supporting Palestine and supporting issues as related to Palestine in trying to, one, negotiate a ceasefire as related to the incident that went on in Palestine, and also went out here deriding and denouncing Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. And once Jaamal Bowman did this, he wound up upsetting many of the members of his district who were a part of the Jewish community. And those members of that Jewish community were so incensed with Jaamal Bowman's possibly anti-Semitic statements that they wound up looking to wage a campaign to oust Jaamal Bowman from his seat as the congressman from New York's congressional district. Now, this is where Jaamal Bowman going out here and being a part of a minority coalition wound up blowing up in his face because he walked away from the black voter and the black vote in the hopes of being an individual who was going to be part of a minority coalition. And he thought that coalition would basically go out here and be the one that would allow him to coast to re-election. However, he wound up alienating one part of that minority coalition with his statements against Israel that supported Palestine, and that basically wound up galvanizing a base in the Jewish community to go out here and look to oust him from his seat. Now, the late David Carroll tried to explain the political process to black people regarding how politics works, and I clearly see how the process works as related to ousting Jaamal Bowman, because that base of Jewish voters were so upset about Jaamal Bowman's what they believed to be anti-Semitic statements that supported Palestine, that they wound up looking to galvanize themselves, and they created an agenda to oust Jaamal Bowman from having that seat in the 16th district. And as they created that agenda to get Jaamal Bowman out of that seat, they wound up creating this agenda and put their money behind it. And as they put their money behind that agenda, what they did was go out here and pick a candidate, George Latimer, who was 70 years old, to represent their agenda. And their agenda was to get Jaamal Bowman out of that seat, because he was not representing their interest and he was not representing their agenda. And since he was not representing their interest and their agenda, what they did was put their money together in an effort to oust Jaamal Bowman in the primary. And money was no object as related to this, because when it came to those Jewish voters basically were looking to promote their agenda, and as they were looking to promote their agenda to remove an individual who was promoting and supporting Palestine, money was no object, and they were willing to spend over $25 million, mainly because Jaamal Bowman again spoke against their interests. And as he spoke against their interests, this is where they wound up saying that they wanted to send a message. And again, this spending of money was not about the money. It was really about the message. And it was all about sending a message that if you go out here and support Palestine and you go out here and speak against Israel, you will be punished severely. And that's what was done here as related to Jaamal Bowman, who is basically waking up to the shock of his life, because he thought he could go out here and be this progressive who would go out here and stand for so-called diversity and inclusion, and thought he was an individual black man as a part of this group known as the Squad. But they all showed him that when it came to him being black, they didn't really care about him being in the Squad. No, they basically showed him that when it comes to politics, it's all about agenda and having the money to support an agenda. And this is what David Carroll tried to explain to black people, that when you have an agenda, you can get your candidate put up in office. And again, Jaamal Bowman didn't stand a chance, and I saw this coming as far back as when he called himself pulling that stunt with the whole fire alarm that was pulled as related to making a statement regarding not working with Republicans for the government shutdown. I looked at this dude and I already knew that this dude was done. And once he started coming out and speaking against Israel, I already saw where this guy was going. Now, Jaamal Bowman basically was still out here in denial, thinking that as an individual black man, he could go out here and just represent himself as an individual, not understanding that in the subtle politics that transpire around black people, you are basically, again, as an individual on your own. And that was shown to Jaamal Bowman as he was looking to continue running this feudal race against George Latimer. And as he continued to try to run this feudal race against George Latimer, what happened to Jaamal Bowman is that he basically thought he had allies in that minority coalition with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and thought that these women were basically going to look to cover him as related to his campaign. But once those women started to see his poll numbers basically plummeting to basically 17 points, being behind George Latimer in a primary, and then saw him get and on the way to getting crushed, we started to see those people who were a part of that minority coalition basically wind up putting distance between him and them. And as Jaamal Bowman was looking for support from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, according to one report, she basically ghosted him, and Jaamal Bowman basically learned the hard lesson about being a black bootlick who was looking to be an individual. And one of those lessons that you learn as related to the whole being an individual is that you're on your own. And again, when you're on your own without the support of the black community, you're basically gonna be kicked out because, as Professor Black Truth has always said, bootlick is a job without a retirement plan. And it's looking like Jaamal Bowman ain't got a retirement plan as related to where he's gonna go with New York's 16th Congressional District. And this former principal turned politician basically learned a hard lesson as related to the unwritten rules of America as related to being black. He learned how black he was when they decided that they didn't want him to be the congressperson for the 16th Congressional District, because when it comes to being the congressperson of a district, you need to be able to have the support of people in the community. And again, Jaamal Bowman got elected, I believe, basically because of the black vote. And again, because Jaamal Bowman took the black vote for granted and didn't provide any tangibles for foundational black Americans or support foundational black Americans, which was shown at a rally that he had in the Bronx, which was basically a ghost town. It basically showed that he, again, is just again reaping what he sowed, later than what he sowed, greater than what he sowed, for walking away from the black vote and walking away from all of those black constituents who took their booties to the poll in 2021 to go out here and vote for him. And when they saw that he was not looking to support black people's interests by going out here and pulling that juvenile stunt, by pulling that fire alarm, that's when black people were not looking to go out here and look to get up out of their seats to go vote in this primary for Jaamal Bowman. And Jaamal Bowman, again, wound up alienating most of those Jewish constituents in his district by going out here and making those what some believe to be anti-Semitic statements, and that basically wound up sealing his fate in this case. And what we see here is, again, a textbook example of what happens to black bootlicks who go out here and believe that they are individuals and representing their interests. What happens is that they wind up losing the election, because what's being done here is that the constituency, basically with the most money, is showing that they are going to support the candidate that supports their agenda. And again, Jaamal Bowman didn't support the agenda of Israel, and he didn't really support the agenda of America, because him supporting Palestine was basically him supporting Hamas. And as he looked to support Hamas in a congressional district which had a strong Jewish base, he basically put the nail in his own coffin as related to his whole case. And this was what happens to black bootlicks who, again, want to go out here and believe they are an individual, believe that they can go out here and form alliances with other people as related to a squad. But we see that the squad basically lost a member, and the only member that predominantly female squad wound up losing was Jaamal Bowman, the black man, who was basically looking like a big beta male by going out here and standing at the side of women instead of setting a course and a direction for himself as a black man. And as he looked to stand at the side of women like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib, they basically wound up yanking the rug out from under him, showing us that the minority coalition at the end of the day was anti-black, and showed that the black man's position in that whole in Congress, when he was looking to, again, get the support of others, he had no support on his own, because when it comes to a black man in America, he's on his own. And what's really sad about Jaamal Bowman is as he was on his way out, he became more and more emotional and acting more and more erratic, again, embarrassing the image of black men and showing us that he was not ready to lead as a man, and not ready to lead as a man because he didn't understand the subtle politics transpiring around him as related to him maintaining his political power. Because Jaamal Bowman didn't go out here and look to galvanize his base, because his base was foundational black Americans, and if it wasn't for foundational black Americans, Jaamal Bowman wouldn't have been put in the seat for New York's Congressional District. And we see here the impact of everything Professor Black Truth has stated about black people staying home because we don't get any tangibles or support for a black agenda. Because what happened here with Jaamal Bowman is that instead of him looking to support a black agenda and support a black base, he decided to walk away from his black base. And because he walked away from the black base, black voters stayed home at this primary. Now, black people usually aren't that aware of primaries, but had he been out here galvanizing black people instead of talking about issues as related to Palestine and issues in Israel, again, issues that don't really focus, that black people aren't focused on in Co-op City, in Mount Vernon, and in places like New Rochelle, had he been focused on black voters and looking to talk about issues as related to the black agenda, such as the anti-black hate crime bill, such as getting actual police reform and reparations, he might have been able to galvanize a base to come out to vote in that primary that would have allowed him to be able to maintain his seat and basically be able to coast into the general election. Because when it comes to Congress people, they usually are able to coast to a re-election very easily. But because Jaamal Bowman wanted to go out here and show how far progressive he is with what they call woke ideas, the whole base in that district wound up breaking him easily. And they broke him because they basically wanted to send a message. Again, they want to send a message that they can easily break one of their toys. And again, Jaamal Bowman was a toy as related to political power. He really didn't know how to wield political power. He didn't really understand how political power worked. No, Jaamal Bowman basically was there to be a token and represent as a symbol, and he was meant to be out here to be a parrot. But instead of him parroting, he decided to get his own voice as related to issues and wasn't speaking on black issues. No, the main reason why he lost is because he wasn't speaking on black issues. He decided to go out here and support the group of Palestinians who were not supporting him. Because again, the critical question I have to ask Jaamal Bowman is how many Palestinians are in your district? Because when you answer that critical question, you see why Jaamal Bowman lost. He lost because he was out here looking to represent the interest of other quote-unquote minorities, but wasn't looking out for the black voters in his community. And because he didn't look out for those black voters in his community and teach them the political process that David Carroll tried to teach black people here on YouTube, that you need to have your agenda, you need to have your base, and you need your base to show up as constituents. And that's how things work. And again, the people who are part of the Jewish district understood this. They understood that the agenda was to get Jaamal Bowman out of this seat before he could go out here and promote anti-Semitic rhetoric and decide to get this man out of the seat before he could push an anti-Semitic agenda. So what they did was come together and pick their candidate, again, a 70-year-old seasoned candidate who they knew was going to represent their interests and be accountable to them. That's what happened with Jaamal Bowman. He was running against a group, again, as related to an agenda, and you didn't really need that much money, but they spent that much money because they were that passionate about getting him out. They spent that much money because, one, they were passionate about getting him out of office and him being there to represent anti-Semitic narratives, and two, they got him out because they wanted to send a message to the world that if you go against Israel, if you go against the interest of the Jewish community, this is what they will do to get you out of office. And sadly, many people don't really see the impact of this at all. No, they don't see that you have to have your agenda and you have to have your interests. And again, a lot of black people, they're not going to get this. They're not sit there and think, oh, Jaamal Bowman is gone. But Jaamal Bowman is gone because he didn't go out here and galvanize a base or support black interests, and he thought that he could go out here and represent other people, but other people weren't representing him, and that's why Jaamal Bowman is now on the unemployment line and is a former congressman. Now, if you want to pick up some of my positive black fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos taking bootlicks like Jaamal Bowman to the barbecue, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.
Support black-owned and black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.